My sister-in-law and I were the most beautiful women of the previous dynasty. On the day the kingdom fell, the new emperor issued a decree. The most beautiful women were to be sent to the crown prince. Back then, I had publicly rejected the crown prince's marriage proposal. My sister-in-law had even pointed at his nose and declared, I wouldn't pick up the trash that others have discarded. Now that the imperial decree had been slapped in our faces, we both hugged each other and shook like leaves. We would rather die than step foot into the Eastern Palace. Who would have thought that my mother-in-law, the noble consort, would glance at us coldly and make a decision on the spot? Then I shall be the one to marry the crown prince. After receiving the imperial decree, I couldn't even eat. My maid tried to persuade me. My lady, please eat at least a little something. You've only had 6 bowls of rice today. If you keep going like this, your health won't be able to take it. I waved my hand with a sullen face. Don't call me my lady anymore. The kingdom is gone. The prince is gone. What kind of princess am I? I stared at the fish fillets on the table, thinking about the days ahead where I'd be at the mercy of others like fish on a cutting board, and tears streamed down my face instantly. Just then my sister-in-law rushed in, frantic. Qi Lingchun, how can you still have the heart to eat? I sighed. When I rejected the marriage back then, how could I have known his father would rebel? Who knew he would end up as the crown prince? Something occurred to me, and my eyes lit up. You aren't bad looking yourself. Maybe the person the decree refers to is you, Qin Dongyu. If you enter the Eastern Palace, at least put in a good word for me with the crown prince. Qin Dongyu bristled immediately. What nonsense are you spouting? The person in the decree was meant to be me from the start. Do you really think you're better looking than me? A second later she wilted, muttering softly, but I'm scared. I'm afraid the crown prince will slice me up like boiled fish. Back then, after you rejected him, he turned to me, acting as if he were begrudgingly accepting me. I retorted right to his face. The trash that Qi Lingchun doesn't want, I don't want either. Get lost back to where you came from. We stared at each other for 3 seconds, then hugged each other and wailed. It is over tomorrow. The 2 most beautiful women in the capital will likely meet their tragic end. While we were crying our hearts out, the door was pushed open. My mother-in-law, the noble consort, walked in, accompanied by her maid Kaixin, seeing us sobbing uncontrollably. What are you crying about? It is a joyous occasion for me, and you 2 are here mourning. I stammered and explained the situation with the imperial decree. My mother-in-law remained calm. About that, I've known for a long time. What does it have to do with you 2? Kaixin, tell them. Who is the greatest beauty in the capital? Kaixin replied instantly. Returning to my mistress, it is you. You are a perfect 10 out of 10 beauty. My mother-in-law glanced at us sideways again. And what about these 2? Kaixin swept her gaze over us. These 2 are 9-point beauties, equally matched in appearance, known as the twin gems of the capital. But you, my mistress, deserve a 10, only because 10 is the maximum score. They only have the looks of a 9. My mother-in-law slapped her thigh. There you have it. The decree asks for the most beautiful woman of the previous dynasty. That must be me. She turned and announced, you 2 will accompany me to the Eastern Palace tomorrow. My sister-in-law and I were dumbfounded. My mother-in-law comforted us. Don't worry. Once I reach the Eastern Palace, I will plead with the crown prince. You 2 were young and didn't know any better. He won't hold the past against you. I steeled myself and refused. No way. Since when does a mother-in-law remarry and drag 2 daughters-in-law along with her? Besides, isn't there still Auntie Kai? My mother-in-law blurted out. She won't do. She is just a dead machine. Seeing me stunned, she quickly corrected herself. She is not as thoughtful as you 2. Seeing us still looking like dead fish, she immediately opened her watery eyes and acted spoiled. If you don't accompany me, I won't have any help by my side. My previous workers have all run away. Qin Dongyu and I couldn't hold out, and could only nod and agree to accompany my mother-in-law into the Eastern Palace. After my mother-in-law left, my sister-in-law stared at me. Are you really going to accompany mother-in-law into the Eastern Palace? I glared back. Didn't you agree to? Why are you pretending? Don't tell me you want to run away. Although my mother-in-law is beautiful and was made a noble consort, she actually has no background to support her. At the time, it was as if she had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. To save our lives, my sister-in-law and I immediately went back to our maiden homes to cry, make a scene, and threaten suicide. My sister-in-law got a large dowry for my mother-in-law from her family, and I made my father, who prides himself on being a pure, scholarly gentleman, agree for my noble consort mother-in-law to be married off from our house. The next day, my mother-in-law's sedan chair was carried out. My father was absent-minded the whole time, muttering to himself, is something not right here? What kind of person am I? I actually dared to marry off a former noble consort to the current crown prince. Am I that powerful? Is it possible that the one sitting on the throne now isn't the emperor? My mother covered his mouth and swallowed his words. The road from the mansion to the palace was full of onlookers, everyone talking about how the #1 beauty was remarrying into the Eastern Palace. It seems the twin beauties of the capital, Miss Qi and Miss Qin, have finally been ranked. Qi Lingchun is definitely the most beautiful, since 2 generations of emperors wanted her as a daughter-in-law. Her beauty goes without saying. Hearing these words, I only had one thought: I am so wronged. Qin Dongyu had publicly rejected the marriage to the crown prince, who was then the general's son, and even mocked him, earning a reputation for being sharp-tongued, and no one wanted to marry her. Latter, I don't know what the noble consort said to the Qi family, but her mother made a huge fuss, forcing her father to find a way to marry her into the palace as the 3rd princess. Consort Qin Dongyu and I were rivals since we were young. Seeing her marry the 3rd prince, I acted on impulse and insisted on marrying the 4th prince. Who knew that on the wedding night, when I lifted the veil, the person sitting there was Qin Dongyu. She smiled brightly. I knew you would insist on marrying over here. Didn't expect that, did you? There were never any 3rd or 4th princes. Yes, the 3rd and 4th princes in the palace are non-existent people. The noble consort did indeed give birth to twins, but they died when they were just 3 months old. The emperor loved the noble consort's beauty, but didn't want a reputation for being lecherous. To save face, he claimed she had given birth to sons, and kept promoting her. For so many years, no one in the palace knew that the 3rd and 4th princes had long been dead. They were just 2 dead people who had to be raised according to the rules. When they reached the age to marry, the emperor naturally had to arrange marriages for them. Qin Dongyu was sent in by her mother. I was baited by Qin Dongyu and jumped in myself. Arriving at the Eastern Palace, we had to pay our respects to the Crown Prince. I had to pay my respects to the Crown Prince. Qin Dongyu was hiding among the servants, refusing to come out no matter what. He had burned his bridges too thoroughly back then. Refusing the marriage was one thing, but he had also gone around the capital claiming the Crown Prince was a toad, lusting after a swan. He was afraid of losing face, and afraid the Crown Prince would settle the score. So he hid, not daring to show his face. There was no other way, so I had to accompany my mother-in-law by the bridal sedan. The moment the Crown Prince caught sight of me, his expression darkened instantly, full of displeasure. Why is it you? It seems the one hiding in the sedan. Is that sharp-tongued woman Qin Dongyu? That sharp-tongued woman. He spoke coldly again, his tone full of impatience. If it weren't for the emperor saying that the Qi and Qin families are the heads of the civil and military officials, to win over both their powers, I wouldn't even want to deal with women like you. As soon as he finished speaking, the Crown Prince roughly pulled my mother-in-law from the sedan. She stumbled, staggering as she was pulled, and couldn't help but cry out, "It hurts. It hurts." Then she fell into the Crown Prince's arms. The Crown Prince acted as if he'd been burned, reaching out to push her away, scolding her sharply. "Don't make those delicate whimpering sounds. You vixen. Don't you dare try to seduce me. What kind of perfume are you wearing? Don't ever use it again." My mother-in-law felt wronged. The Crown Prince curled his lips, pulling her inside. They hadn't gone many steps when he suddenly let go, telling her to follow on her own. In the bridal chamber, the official was still reciting the ceremony. The Crown Prince impatiently interrupted him. "Enough, spare me the nonsense. It is just a formality. Everyone get out." After everyone retreated, he threatened my mother-in-law. "However, it is only a formality. Once my father has firmly secured the throne, I will divorce you immediately. I am still a pure man. Don't you dare think about consummating the marriage with me tonight." As he said this, he casually lifted the veil. The moment he saw her face, he stood there completely stunned. I can understand. I had the same foolish look the first time I saw my mother-in-law. Back then, I insisted on marrying the 4th prince, thinking that if the mother was this beautiful, the son couldn't be bad. The Crown Prince couldn't even straighten his tongue. "Qin Dongyu, how did you grow up to look like this?" My mother-in-law smiled shyly. "My name is not Qin Dongyu." The Crown Prince's heart was pounding. "Then what should I call you?" "I am your Crown Princess now. You can call me Madam or my dear wife." The Crown Prince tried to act cold and aloof. "Wife? So what if you're this beautiful? I will never be swayed by beauty. I am the Crown Prince now, holding great power. I can have whatever I want." Before he could finish, my mother-in-law reached out and pulled his belt. "What was my husband saying about power? Why don't you feel it for yourself?" My mother-in-law took the Crown Prince's hand and gave me a look, signaling me to leave immediately. As soon as I closed the door, the sound of tables and chairs crashing echoed from inside. "Don't you come over here. I will never touch you. Stop with the wishful thinking." My mother-in-law's voice drifted out slowly. "Understood. Is my husband incapable?" "Who is incapable? I am very proficient. Don't move. I'll do it myself." A while later, sounds were intermittently drifting out from the room. "My husband, I was wrong. It is here. Shut up." I know. I was just testing to see if you were paying attention. Waiting outside was boring enough as it was. I simply asked the Eastern Palace servants to get me a roasted lamb for a midnight snack. Who would have thought before the lamb was even ready? A furious woman came charging over. She reached out, intending to pry open the door to the bridal chamber. I immediately went to stop her. I'm no useless person who only knows how to eat. What are you doing? She didn't listen at all. She threw herself against the door and pounded on it hard. Cousin, open the door. I know you're in there. Don't hide inside and stay silent. If you have the nerve to sleep with a woman, have the nerve to open the door. Didn't you say marrying someone else was just for show? That you wouldn't touch her? You promised you would marry me. Cousin. I kindly reminded her, your cousin isn't being silent. He is making quite a bit of noise himself. Who knew that would only make her more agitated? There was no other way. I firmly restrained her hands and feet, and no matter how loudly she shrieked, the commotion inside didn't stop for a second. Heh. It is a good thing I've got some strength. I've had a huge appetite since I was born, and my strength grew right along with it. It is a pity I was born into the wrong family, a household of civil officials. My father is an old stubborn mule, but my mother, being understanding, secretly hired a martial arts master for me. All these years, I haven't let my combat skills slide. Just then, my roasted lamb arrived. I tied her up securely and turned around to eat my midnight snack. My cousin was even angrier when she saw that. Qi Lingchun, are you even human? I'm in such a miserable state, and you actually have the heart to eat. Qin Dongyu has already married my crown prince cousin, and you're not even jealous. I was full of question marks. Jealous of what? Jealous that she married the crown prince. But Qin Dongyu didn't want to marry the crown prince either. Seeing my blank expression, my cousin stomped her feet in frustration. What do you know? Once she is married in, she is the crown princess. She'll be the empress in the future. She'll be riding over your head for the rest of your life. You white moonlight wannabe. How are you going to compete with the female lead now? The more she thought about it, the angrier she got, until she finally broke down. I'm going crazy. The heavens are just too biased. When they made me, they just flicked some mud around. But for you two, they just had to sculpt you so beautifully. One is a glutton who only knows how to eat. The other hides in her room all day reading picture books and being sentimental. It is a waste of your top-tier innocent flower and seductive beauty faces. Not sisters. That is getting a bit personal. She stiffened her neck. Untie me right now. I shook my head. No, the crown prince and my mother-in-law are in the bridal chamber. I can't let you cause trouble. What? That is not Qin Dongyu in there. It is your mother-in-law. Isn't she an old lady? She pondered for a long time, then tried to bargain, then untie one of my hands. I want to eat the roasted lamb too. I'll just stay here and not leave. I want to see just how capable that old lady is. To be able to snatch a man from the white moonlight and the female lead. What kind of garbage plot is this? Is it a bootleg version? It is bad enough the white moonlight isn't frail and dying early, but she is also strong as an ox, and the garbage male lead is actually in bed with a woman and sleeping with women other than his white moonlight. Is he planning to start a harem? I thought that after transmigrating here, I would be able to take the female lead's place. Turns out the male lead is just a rotten cucumber, sleeping with whoever he wants. I couldn't understand what she was saying. I glanced at Aunt Kaisine. Aunt nodded. I untied one of my cousin's hands. Strange. Aunt Kaisine is a living, breathing person standing right here. Yet it is as if they can't see her at all. The next morning, my mother-in-law and the crown prince finally walked out of the bridal chamber. My mother-in-law's face was rosy, and she was full of vigor. In contrast, the crown prince looked haggard and appeared completely exhausted. The crown prince spotted my cousin squatting at the door, and his legs went weak with fright, nearly causing him to trip. Luckily, my mother-in-law reached out to steady him. The crown prince looked grim. Why are you here? My cousin ignored him completely, her eyes glued directly to my mother-in-law's face. So beautiful. Then she frowned and glared at the crown prince, speaking with indignation. I want to report the old master. This is so unfair. Having a female lead and a supporting female character isn't enough. Why would you pair this jerk of a male lead with such a top-tier beauty? How does he deserve to have someone so wonderful? I sighed to myself. She has started spouting nonsense again. The crown prince acted as if he hadn't heard her, his brow furrowed in disgust. However, my mother-in-law took a look at my cousin, stepped forward, and untied the ropes herself, helping her up. She even turned to chide me gently. Lingchun, you're being too rough. Look, you've tied Miss Lin's wrists until they're red. My cousin stuttered on the spot. Sister, how did you know my surname is Lin? I've long heard that the crown prince has a cousin who is lively and straightforward. It seems the rumors were true. As she finished speaking, my cousin's entire face turned bright red, and she lowered her head feeling incredibly awkward. Watching this scene, the crown prince looked impatient and reached out to grab my mother-in-law's wrist. Why are you wasting your breath on her? Let's go quickly. We still have to pay our respects to the emperor and empress. Cousin Lin muttered under her breath. No way, no way. Does this male lead have some kind of manic disorder? Facing such a beautiful sister, and his attitude is this terrible. As she said this, she nudged me with her elbow, her eyes sparkling. Quick, quick, quick. What is the beautiful sister's name? I replied casually, Liu Ruyan. My cousin's pupils dilated in shock, and she cried out on the spot. It is actually Empress Ruyan. I rolled my eyes at her. What is there to be so surprised about? My mother-in-law is going to see her in-laws. Why are you tagging along? My cousin put her hands on her hips, acting righteous. You're his ex-daughter-in-law. If you can go, why can't I? She clenched her fists, looking protective. There is bound to be some blind cannon fodder jumping out to provoke her later. Sister Ruyan, I'll be your #1 henchman. I'll help you slap the faces of those cannon fodder. When the emperor and empress saw my mother-in-law following behind the crown prince, both of them widened their eyes in shock. The emperor on the dragon throne leaned to one side, nearly falling off entirely. Liu Ruyan, how are you here? The empress also looked pleasantly surprised, speaking in rapid succession. Could it be that Sister Ruyan is worried about her daughter-in-law and followed her into the palace specifically to check on her? As she said this, she turned to look at me beside her, suddenly realizing, so you chose Lingchun. This girl is also, this child has a pure and kind heart. Once she becomes the crown princess, if I am gone one day, there will be someone to carry on. Shut up. The emperor interrupted him sharply, staring fixedly at my mother-in-law. Liu Ruyan, why are you still alive? The late emperor has already died for his country. How dare you cling to life in this world? As soon as these words were spoken, the empress froze on the spot, looking at the emperor in disbelief. You clearly said back then that choosing Sister Ruyan's daughter-in-law as crown princess was to appease the noble families of the previous dynasty, and also to show compassion for Sister Ruyan. My mother-in-law chuckled and spoke in a leisurely manner. It was you who issued the decree back then, stating that the most beautiful woman of the previous dynasty's harem should be the crown princess. Your imperial decree was written in such an ambiguous way. If we are talking about beauty, I have always been second to none. If you didn't mean me, then this muddled decree of yours, was it intended to sow discord between the Qi and Qin families, so they would fight to the death over the position of crown princess? The empress immediately glared fiercely at the emperor. The crown prince was bewildered, looking back and forth between the emperor and my mother-in-law, stammering, You, aren't you Qin Dongyu? My mother-in-law's eyes danced, as she cast a charming wink. Am I not? My husband. Didn't you get enough of a taste last night? How could that young yellow-haired girl have my kind of allure? She stepped forward happily. Your Majesty, that wasn't very honorable of you. The late emperor treated you like a brother and never treated you unfairly. You stole his throne and harmed his heirs. I was his most favored imperial noble consort, yet you even wanted to force me to die with him. The empress was filled with guilt and spoke up righteously. That is right, the four of us grew up together. You told me back then that the late emperor was critically ill, and that none of his many sons were filial, leaving him heartbroken, so you begged him to let you take over the throne. The empress's finger was almost poking the emperor's nose. You even promised me personally that even if you took the throne you would treat Sister Ruyan well. What are you doing now? My mother-in-law instead acted as the peacemaker, waving her hand. Oh my. Mother and father, don't fight over me. A word, and the hall fell into instant silence. The arguing emperor and empress both froze in place. She was completely oblivious, turning to look at the empress, blinking her eyes. Mother, do you think my face is beautiful? The empress was stunned for a long time, before realizing that the mother was addressed to her. She bit the bullet, and replied, Sister Ruyan, as a daughter-in-law you are naturally extremely beautiful. I am so beautiful. How could any man not be moved? My mother-in-law smiled slyly. Perhaps father has long had ulterior motives for me, unable to stand that I was first the late emperor's consort, and now I have become his son's woman, which is why he targets me everywhere. The emperor turned red in the face and neck instantly. Furious. Nonsense. Why would I like you? The person I hate most in this life is a woman like you. Liu Ruyan, with a look of, I get it, knowing, stubborn, defying expression. The crown prince also eyed his father with suspicion. With Ruyan's stunning beauty, how could anyone not be charmed? The emperor was clearly saying one thing but meaning another, turning love into hate. The crown prince stepped forward immediately. Father, even if there were misunderstandings in the past, Ruyan is now my crown princess. Do not harbor any more delusions. You are already old and fading, while Ruyan is in her prime. You two are simply not a match. The empress nodded repeatedly in agreement. If you want a beauty, your majesty, I will personally select concubines for you. You must not compete with your own son. The emperor was so angry he gritted his teeth. I have no interest in Liu Ruyan whatsoever, and there is no need for a selection. The empress is more than enough for me. I am merely feeling that it is unfair to the late emperor. He has been gone for less than 100 days, and you are already seeking a new lover. Liu Ruyan, how can you face him? Mother-in-law smiled suggestively and spoke leisurely. I understand you speak of brotherhood, but in your heart, you're thinking of your sister-in-law. A weak, muttering complaint came from the corner. Not an idol. Isn't that a bit too crude? I was startled. Why are you still here? Cousin Lin rolled her eyes hard. So, I'm just heir to you, right? In this day and age, the female lead who transmigrated into a book gets no special treatment. By now, the empress and the crown prince were convinced that the emperor was in unrequited love with mother-in-law, turning his love into hate. The emperor, having his secret exposed, flew into a rage of embarrassment. He flicked his sleeves on the spot and chased everyone out of the hall. Back at the Eastern Palace, the crown prince turned and saw me still following behind. His face darkened immediately. Who are you? Why are you still following us? I covered my face. So awkward. Cousin Lin was right. Is the crown prince crazy? Mother-in-law immediately chimed in. Husband, have you forgotten? Husband, you've forgotten this is Lingchun. You even proposed to him back in the day. It is a pity he married my son later. You two weren't meant to be. But then again, if there is no romantic fate, there are other kinds. The crown prince panicked and interrupted immediately. What kind of fate? There is no such thing at all. He hurriedly explained to mother-in-law. Ruyan, I forgot all about that proposal years ago. I was young then, and didn't know any better. He leaned in closer, his tone even sounding a bit ingratiating. If we're talking about real fate, it is between the two of us. Isn't it a coincidence? I need to take a wife, and you are also a widow. Neither of us is married. We're a perfect match. A match made in heaven. Mother-in-law followed his lead. So you're saying we are a heaven-sent match? The crown prince nodded happily. Of course. Mother-in-law pressed on step by step. Since it is a good match, then we are one as husband and wife. That goes without saying. Great. Then isn't my daughter-in-law your daughter-in-law? The crown prince was stunned. He froze on the spot. Of course not. How did she become my daughter-in-law? In a second, mother-in-law's eyes turned red. In a second, mother-in-law's eyes. Tears began to fall. She cried like a beauty in the rain. Just now, you said we were one as husband and wife. What is mine is yours. Could it be that you are just like the emperor, only coveting my beauty and refusing to accept my past? Do you despise me for having been married and having a child? The crown prince was so anxious he waved his hands repeatedly. No. He turned and saw me standing there, dazed. He quickly shifted the blame. Lingchun, why are you just standing there? Why are you so inconsiderate? You've been following us for ages, and you can't even call me father. Look, you've made your mother cry. Go on, comfort her. My dear, the wedding yesterday was too rushed. I forgot to prepare a gift for our daughter. I'll go get one for you both right now. With that, he took off running. He scrambled away until he was out of sight. Good grief, he just promoted me from daughter-in-law to daughter. I walked up with a blank expression, trying to take back the handkerchief soaked in chilly water from my mother-in-law's hand. Who knew she would grip it so tightly and refuse to let go? Don't be in such a rush. It will be useful later. I was completely bewildered. My mother-in-law turned and whispered, Kaisin, how much longer until the Empress reaches the Eastern Palace? My lady, according to my calculations, she will arrive in 15 minutes at the latest. Aunt Kaisin suddenly replied, giving me a start. Her presence is so incredibly faint that if you don't keep an eye on her, you won't even notice she is there. I suppose this is the robotic quality my mother-in-law always talks about. Sure enough, just as Aunt Kaisin said, before long, the Empress came rushing to the Eastern Palace. When she walked in, my mother-in-law was lying on the couch, sobbing into her hands. The room was a complete mess. Teapots were shattered all over the floor. The table had been overturned. One of the sturdy palace doors had been kicked off its hinges, hanging precariously. The Empress's expression darkened instantly. Her eyes filled with heartache. She hurried to the couch and crouched down, reaching out to gently stroke my mother-in-law's back. Sister Ruyan, what has happened to you? Did the the crown prince give you a hard time? That little brat actually dared to disrespect you. I'll make him pay for this." Only then did my mother-in-law slowly lift her head. Her eyes were red from crying, the corners still damp, and her nose was flushed red too. "It is not the crown prince's fault. The emperor, he." Halfway through, my mother-in-law choked up again. Tears slid down her cheeks, her hesitation making her look even more pitiful. Seeing this, the empress didn't say a word, but pulled my mother-in-law into her arms, patting her back gently to comfort her. Her tone was full of fury. "What did that bastard emperor do? Did he bully you? Tell me everything. I will stand up for you." My mother-in-law leaned on the empress's shoulder, her sobbing slowing down slightly. My hidden feelings were eventually discovered by the crown prince. The crown prince is heartbroken, but he respects the emperor, so he couldn't really do anything. He had no choice but to take it out on the tea sets and furniture, to vent the frustration in his heart. I stood in the corner, silently rolling my eyes. Lies. I was the one who broke the teapot. I was the one who overturned the table. And I was the one who kicked the door. It had absolutely nothing to do with the crown prince. The empress looked at my mother-in-law, who was still trying to make excuses for the crown prince. Even though she was the one who had been wronged, she felt an ache in her heart, and her resentment toward the emperor grew even more. My mother-in-law wiped away her tears and continued in a gentle voice. "It is all the emperor's fault. So many years have passed, yet he still refuses to let go. Today, right in front of the crown prince. He didn't even try to hide his feelings for me. This jade pendant was a gift from the late emperor. We each held one of the pair. I truly cannot fathom how the late emperor's pendant ended up in the emperor's hands. Isn't this act a public slap in the face to the crown prince? The crown prince is still young, and at an age where he is proud and headstrong. It is understandable that he would be angry for a moment." The empress frowned and scolded him for becoming increasingly reckless with age. "I didn't even notice this. Don't worry, sister. I will go and retrieve the pendant," the mother-in-law said worriedly. "Empress, are you going alone tonight? It is too dangerous. Let Lingchun accompany you." The empress paused and replied, "Fine, let's do it tonight." Under the cover of darkness, the empress and I snuck into the emperor's sleeping quarters. That was when I discovered the empress not only knows martial arts, but her movements are incredibly agile. The empress glanced at me and lifted her chin. "Don't underestimate me. I come from a family of generals. This little bit of skill is nothing." We tiptoed inside and saw the emperor already lying on the bed, holding that jade pendant, rubbing it over and over. He looked completely lost in thought. The empress was so angry her teeth ached. She lowered her voice and cursed. "And he dares to say he has no feelings for Sister Ruyan? Only a ghost would believe that." We were watching closely. The palace clock struck with a clanging sound. The emperor suddenly sat up, walked to the edge of the bed, and tapped a hidden spot 3 times. Then he reached out and moved the vase on the table to the side. Before we could react, the dragon bed actually split in 2 down the middle. A figure emerged from a secret passage beneath the bed. I looked closely, and the face was all too familiar. It was actually the late emperor. "Your complexion has been terrible lately. Are those old fossils in the court annoying you again? Or is it that woman Liu Ruyan? Who has given you ideas you shouldn't have? Your Majesty, I would not dare. I just feel that Liu Ruyan is truly difficult to control. I supported your rise to power because you were obedient, timid, and lacked your own opinions. Don't forget who personally eliminated your brothers on that side. If I hadn't used your hands to kill them back then, you wouldn't even be worth a dog now. Back then, the Qi and Qin families had too much power. I faked my death to escape and let you take the throne, just so I could use you as a puppet. To play a game of one trap killing 3 generations. Let the civil and military factions tear each other apart, so we could ultimately reap the rewards. That woman, Liu Ruyan, was a thorn in my side back then. Did you think I was really dead? I was just hiding in the shadows, watching how you manipulated this empire in the palm of your hand. And look at you now. Not only did you fail to control the situation, but you let this woman find an opening and become your crown princess. Are you useless? Or do you think your wings have hardened now, and you really consider yourself the emperor? The empress, hiding in the shadows, turned deathly pale. She finally understood that her husband didn't just fail to love her. He never considered anyone a human being at all, including him, including the emperor. And even this empire was just a playground for his spite. When the empress walked out from the shadows, she was trembling with rage. So that is how it is. This isn't love. This is hell. So the emperor is just a puppet, trapped in the shadow of the late emperor's terror to keep his position. The so-called throne was a massive killing machine from start to finish. The late emperor hid in the shadows, enjoying the thrill of controlling life and death. And the emperor was just a blade he used to purge court officials and harm his own descendants. Our whole family were just tools being manipulated. If we want to survive, we must cut these two strings. This empire is not a toy. This is the destiny we must take back. He didn't stay a moment longer. He grabbed me by the back of my collar and strode toward the Eastern Palace with a gust of wind. When we returned to the Eastern Palace, it was already late at night. The Crown Prince was already fast asleep. Mother-in-law was waiting by the stone bench in the courtyard, her eyes sparkling, staring at the courtyard gate with full anticipation. Seeing mother-in-law's joyful expression, the Empress swallowed the words that were on the tip of her tongue. But after a moment of silence, she gritted her teeth, stepped forward and hugged mother-in-law tightly, leaning into her ear to reveal the secret she had just heard. Absurd. This is too absurd. Two voices spoke at once. I was so startled I turned around immediately. It was the Crown Prince and Cousin Lin speaking. The Empress's face darkened. Why are you two wandering around in the middle of the night instead of sleeping? Are you also harboring mutual affections and meeting late at night to pour out your hearts? Cousin Lin hurriedly retorted to her aunt. Aunt, don't talk nonsense. The Crown Prince also frowned. Who would like a woman like that? Mother, don't wrong me. As soon as he finished speaking, he finally saw who was in the Empress's arms. He immediately stepped forward. Mother, why are you holding my wife? He said this while trying to snatch mother-in-law away from the Empress. Cousin Lin gritted her teeth. Just let that pair of scumbags go. They actually dared to make my idol a child bride. The Crown Prince hesitated. After all, he is my father. The Empress spoke calmly. He is not. Everyone was stunned, their faces full of shock. Seeing this, the Empress decided to be blunt. The Emperor rarely shared a bed with me. We have been married for 3 years without children. I secretly consulted a doctor and learned that he is infertile. To save his face, I never exposed him. I faked a pregnancy before one of his trips abroad. The Crown Prince is an abandoned child I adopted from an orphanage. The Crown Prince's face turned ash-gray instantly. So he was not of royal blood after all. Mother-in-law's eyes reddened, and she sighed in a low voice. Even if we are unwilling, what can we do? The throne is in their hands. They are the butchers, and we are the fish on the block. The Empress's gaze sharpened. Then we shall rebel against them. We have already done it once, so one more time won't hurt. The Crown Prince clenched his fists, looking at the Empress. Mother, are you serious? Are we really going to rebel against him? Although it was hard to accept his true origins at first, thinking of the Emperor's cold-heartedness and thinking of the grievances my wife had suffered, the unwillingness in his heart gradually overcame his hesitation. Cousin Lin was even more indignant. Why should we let them act so recklessly? Harming so many people, they must be made to pay the price. The Empress nodded, her tone resolute. At this point, we have no way back. Since the Emperor has no regard for our feelings and has turned this palace and court into a foul mess, we need not concern ourselves with the bonds of sovereign and subject, or husband and wife. The few of them looked at each other, their minds already made up. The Crown Prince's voice trembled slightly. Rebel? With what shall we rebel? My father is in charge of the palace guards. I will write a letter to persuade him to open the palace gates. Someone else spoke up. I have already contacted various armies when the Emperor rebelled back then. They stayed put. Now they are all waiting outside the city, just waiting to enter and capture the rebels. The only thing missing is someone to open the city gates of the capital. Cousin Lin immediately raised her hand. I'll go. My father and several uncles are guarding the city gates. I will go and persuade them to open the gates. Aunt, give me another letter. Take it and show it to them. No one will dare to doubt it. He suddenly turned and pointed at the person who had just spoken. Wait, no. Who are you? Qin Dongyu cupped his hands. Qin Dongyu. Cousin Lin's eyes lit up. So it was you. Let me think about what I can do. I can personally protect your safety. On the day the rebellion succeeds, my father can lead the kneeling to support the new emperor's ascension and write essays denouncing the old emperor's cruelty and tyranny. If heaven wants him dead, that is what he does best. The next day, the palace gates were ablaze with fire. The old emperor's guards were neutralized. Our group drew our swords and stormed into the Golden Throne Hall. We saw the emperor and the former emperor huddled in the corner, clinging to each other, trembling in fear. Seeing everyone rush in, the two of them instantly let go, running toward the Empress and mother-in-law respectively. Empress, Ruyan, Before he could finish, the Empress and mother-in-law struck with their swords simultaneously. A clean cut to the throat. Both emperors breathed their last. Mother-in-law brushed the blood off her hem, her expression unchanged. Afterward, before everyone crowned Liu Ruyan as the new emperor, one night, everyone discussed appointing the new monarch. They held a vote. Liu Ruyan received 5 votes. The crown prince won. The crown prince scratched his head and gave an awkward laugh. Haha, my lady, you really are something. Why did you vote for me? You could have just voted for yourself. Mother-in-law just smiled and said nothing. Who actually voted for the crown prince? Is it really that hard to guess? The former emperor Liu Ruyan ascended the throne, later clearing away deep-seated corruption and employing talent without bias. The former empress Ren Qingping was appointed prime minister, managing the affairs of the realm. Qin Dongyu and I were both named princesses, raised within the palace. Cousin Lin became a court official, spending her days in the palace watching over her idol, which was satisfying enough for her. Only the former crown prince became the most inconspicuous consort in the palace. 3 years later, on a night he was to serve the emperor, the sword he hid in his sleeve had just been drawn. When Aunt Kaixin struck him down in the hall, the system's voice echoed in Liu Ruyan's ears. Master, you have eliminated 3 male leads. Achievement unlocked. You may proceed to the next world to participate in the Kill 10 Male Leads competition. Would you like to leave immediately? Liu Ruyan wiped the blood splattered on him, his tone languid. No, Kaixin, make your AI program a bit more human. I work myself to the bone completing missions, so I can enjoy a life of leisure later, not to keep working like a beast of burden. He looked up, his gaze indifferent. Scan a list of unmarried handsome men in the capital for me. The harem is a bit empty. I'll add a few more. Understood, Master. Would you like 8-point handsome men, 9-point handsome men, or 10-point handsome men? I want them all. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. The Empress summoned the 2 of us to the imperial study. She handed the imperial seal to Qin Dongyu, her voice calm. Go, my daughter. Let me see what you can achieve. She then tucked a military token into my hand. When I sent you out of the palace back then, I fear I sent you to the wrong place. Your combative and brave nature might have been better suited for the military Qin family, but it is what it is. Keep this token. If your sister ever acts perversely and loses her way, then you must rise up against her. My jaw dropped. Qin Dongyu, however, remained composed. She didn't even bat an eye. So we were the 3rd prince and the 4th prince who were destined to die early. The next day, the Empress passed away. On that same day, Cousin Lin also vanished from the palace. She followed her idol to the next world.